Hello, and welcome to this edition of Talk Geek. Our guest tonight, the man doesn't need an introduction, because the fact is, he's absolutely the coolest man on the planet. I believe he's on with us, Mark?
I am on with you, and I'm thinking, as kind as that all is, one more hour will be a drop in the ocean.
Yes.
I mean, so let's get right to it and batter up, and let's hear the first question.
All right, we have a caller already, so.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, I just want to just say firstly that I'm not actually a Star Wars fan, but I just respect, what Mark Hamill did with the character in the original series. But really, my question to Mark Hamill is, why do you think the prequels are so bad in comparison to the original? Because me watching it as an objective film fan, when I see the prequels, it's void of any character, void of any drama, and it just doesn't have the great characterization and the acting that was in the original series. So I just wanted to Mark to tell me why in the prequels it lacks the drama and the kind of drive of emotion that the original series had.
I see. Well, I'd have to accept your premise that you're correct in your assessment. I mean, certainly everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I will say they are quite different in terms of the overall tone. I mean, let me just say that I think the first trilogy, it has a solemnity to it. Do you know what I mean? It's very solemn.
Yeah.
It's very serious. And I'm thinking partially because of the story in our trilogy involving the characters that they did involve. I mean, there were more Americans. There were three, there's the princess and the pirate and the farm boy, and they were all Americans, and they were major characters. The sidekick was British in Tony Daniels as the robot. But what I'm saying is the new films have, classical actors that are all English, and they're all serious. I mean, they're treating the material almost like it's a religious film. They remind me of like the Ten Commandments, or not the Ten Commandments, but just the kind of gravity that we were much more silly. I mean, it was kind of, I think it had gang comedy elements in it, You came in that, give me that weapon. You call this a plan? I mean, there was bantering and there were hijinks. It was sort of had a foot in each camp of being, being as true to the material, but having fun with it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think, I don't know. I get into trouble here, you guys, because I'm just speaking as myself, but because of my association with the pictures, my voice gets amplified in a way that it shouldn't. I mean, if we were sitting across having a piece of pizza, because I thought everybody did a great job in the prequels and so forth, and I'm just saying that they are different, and they're probably people that think that the first one, they're advocates for both sides. I mean, I heard young people don't like the old ones because they're too old-fashioned and the special effects aren't good enough. So, there's room for a lot of opinion.
But don't you feel that because George Lucas had so much of this CGI and the technology for the prequels, that the CGI and the technology sort of was an overarching effect on good scripts and good characterization? Because in the original,
well, I've said that the original trilogy, less is more, which is in opposition to the first trilogy where more is more. You're absolutely right. The visual effects are everywhere. I mean, it's the buildings and the spacecraft, and I don't know. I mean, it takes a lot of getting used to, for me anyway. I mean, but I am hesitant to really go on record too harshly, because I don't mean to be critical at all. It's just, I don't know. I mean, it's just different sensibilities.
For instance, just like one last question, and then I'll basically go for other callers. I mean,
I respect your opinion, but yeah, go ahead.
But where do you feel the Star Wars can now go? Because I feel that when I talk to people, because I'm a co-host of a fan site as well, and when I talk to Star Wars fans who are fans of the original series that you had, they are not fans anymore of Star Wars, and they feel like because it's now a bad name and he's staying with the Star Wars name, and they don't feel that there's any more future for Star Wars. Do you still think that a Star Wars can really give something new for the younger age of the millennium, or do you feel like if with the emergence of Batman and Dark Knight and all these films, this Star Wars franchise is really dead with today's youth?
Well, I know they're planning a TV series. I mean, I just read about this. I don't think that I have some sort of inside connection and I'm talking to George every week. I'm not. But I read, everybody's read about this proposed 1-hour dramatic live-action Star Wars series, which takes place, again, I'm not sure where, but it doesn't involve the cast of either trilogy. It's, I guess, somewhere in between a time frame, or at least characters that we haven't seen before, as far as I can gather. And that, all I thought was that might be a great opportunity for the franchise to reinvent itself in the sense that telling a 45-minute story, if it has commercials, let's say, or even if it's an hour on HBO, that's a much different task than, a big event, special effects, motion picture. You see what I'm saying? And I think in that case, you might be able to tell smaller, more personal stories, and you'd look for opportunities to compensate for epic special effects display with, a sharper writing. So they might be able to really help themselves in that way, because they'll probably have to tell, if it's a conventional series, you'd have to tell 22 one-hour stories in a season. Who knows? He could make whatever deal he wants. Maybe he'll just do fewer than that. But I think maybe that might present an opportunity for them to reestablish themselves. It's hard for me to know because, I can't tell whether at this point there's just a cult following for it or if it's still mainstream in any way. It's hard for me to know. I'm isolated and I don't really pay that much attention to Star Wars.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call, and I'd just like to say, you've done a really good job in reinventing yourself with being the voice of the Joker and going with
thank you.
Star Wars and Luke Skywalker things. I think it's a comment to you of how you've been able to move away from Star Wars and actually create a classic character of the Joker, not being just with one character. So thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you. You're very kind, and very intelligent questions, by the way.
He was talking about that, the difference between the two trilogies. Though the prequel trilogy is a lot more, the visuals are much more dense in the prequels. There's so much going on in there,
Well, but it sort of reflects the sensibility of modern-day Hollywood, in terms of making, building things into the picture that make you want to see it more than once. And my gosh, it's such an assault on your senses. You have to see it 3 or 4 times just to get a fix on where, the logistics are tough to ascertain on one viewing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right. But it's a sticky area for me to discuss because, good Lord, I'm one of the things I pride myself on was trying to stay out of the way of the first trilogy and really treat it as an entity that stands on its own, as a beginning and a middle and an end, and the last thing I would have wanted if I were, the younger cast would be to hear, all us old geezers saying, yeah, in my day we did this and that and we didn't have Jar Jar Binks or whatever. It sounds like so sour grapes, and it's not. I'm glad that so many people love it. I think they've made way more money than we have. But anyway, it's not important. And like I say, except for days like today when I'm talking about it on the phone, I just it just goes in one ear and out the other because I have this real sense of having moved on in my own life and what's important to me. And it really is like thinking way back to, almost like things that you did in high school at this point. So
Really?
my questions have to be filtered through the lenses of time.